great to have Nick Foles back here on Sports Spectrum. Hey, Nick, what's going on?
What's up, Jason? Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. It's good to see you and good to talk to you. I can now finally call you retired quarterback Nick Foles because back in August, there was this announcement and some cool things with the Eagles. And on September 16th, Monday Night Football, you're doing some fun stuff with the Eagles. Like, this is really cool. But how's it feel? Like, how's it feel to actually be called retired NFL football player?
You know what? It's definitely a mix of emotions. I've had an opportunity to deal with the emotions over the last year and a half, knowing that after I left the Colts, like it was it. But then, the thoughts of how do you want to retire? What should it be? And really just dealing with the emotions of playing football my whole life, and what you go through. But I'm super grateful. I think the biggest word that comes to my mind and my heart is just a bunch of gratitude. I have a lot of gratitude for the opportunity to play in the NFL. The opportunity to have, great coaches, great mentors, great players, great chaplains. I just think back from when I was a rookie till when I left and even till now. And there was just so much growth in life, in my faith, and everything in between. And I'm just really grateful. But I'm also excited about this next chapter because the next chapter is the unknown chapter. Football was understood. Like I knew what I was getting into. I knew how to deal with it. I knew what the structure was like. This next chapter, I'm trying to find that structure.
If I had talked to you coming into the 2012 season when you were drafted, right? If I had talked to you around this time, early in the football season, and said, Nick, this is how it's going to play out over the next 10, 11 years, would you have signed up for that?
I don't know. I think, I don't know. I mean, when you really look at it, it's so much. And I think that's why God sort of works in those ways where like he doesn't really show you what you're going to go through because you wouldn't go through it, right? So the answer is probably like, I'd be afraid, I would say. I think there'd be fear. But also excitement because there was also a lot of excitement. And I think conquering fear is the biggest thing. And that's what football provides. There's a lot of fear that you have to overcome throughout your journey of football. And for me, that was through faith, and with that was growth. So I think if someone sat there and put in a sermon sort of like, hey, this is what it'll be, I'll probably be freaking out, but then they sort of wrapped it around in a way of like the growth aspect, I'd probably be like, all right, I'm ready to go through it. But if you just told me like flat out what it's going to be, I don't know. It was a lot.
Yeah, no, it's a lot, especially the unknown years and those poignant times that you've shared so many times on Sports Spectrum and other places when you were with the Chiefs and when you were traded to the Rams. Like there was a lot of unknown and uncertainty, and then there's obviously the mountaintop of the Super Bowl. But that's, I mean, it's awesome to think about the tapestry that God kind of puts together because you would have said, oh, give me 10 years and 8 Pro Bowls. And yes, I want the Super Bowl too, but it wasn't like that. And yet you still had the opportunity to experience the highest of highs. It's kind of cool to see how God was working in the midst of all this for you.
Oh, absolutely. He was working throughout it all. And my agent, Justin Schulman, we've talked about it throughout, the last couple of years. He's obviously represented a lot of great players. And he's just like, but my career path is just very unique. As is everyone else's, but it's just super unique, and he's been along for the ride. We've gone through so many tough conversations as it pertains to, contracts and teams and where I'm going to play, where I'm going to stay. But I mean, I just remember in 2012 when I was a rookie, going through that season and even playing a good amount that season, just thinking, man, if this is the NFL, I don't know how long I'm going to be able to play this game. This is not easy. This is very difficult. But to have played 11 years, and to leave the game where I felt like it was the right time for me in my heart to stop playing, not, hey, I don't have it anymore, because physically I still have it. That's apparent each and every day with things I can do physically right now. But in my heart, I just believe that football and sports, so much of it, like if you're really going to give it everything, is your heart. And if your heart is not where it needs to be, you have to really think through that. I knew growing up, like whenever my heart is not where it needs to be, the game deserves all my heart to go on that field with my teammates with the love of the game. Because my power in the game was loving the game and loving my teammates. And if that strength is not where it needs to be, I need to assess that. And you know what? I think having kids and moving around and seeing different things, I was so grateful for the game and grateful for the experiences. But I see these kids and where I'm at now, retired, and I get to be around them and I get to coach them and I get to do all these really special things where a lot of times it's hard though. There's a lot of tantrums. I got 6, 4, and 1. So,
You were in
but
it.
I'm in it. But I've talked to a lot of people that are very wise and have raised kids that are out of the house or in college. And the one thing that is constant is they say, you will never regret spending all that time with your kids. I promise you that. And I think that
Yeah.
I know that as well in the tough times. My wife, Tori, and I talk about all the time when, we're like any other parent. We're dealing with some kids and it's been a tough day. And we finally get them to bed at, hours after we've tried to give them to bed. Because it seems when you try to get them to bed, they have this checklist of things that's insane. It's like, just go to bed.
Yes.
And we just sit there and we have to remind each other, like, you know what, though? Like, these kids are special. We're so grateful to have them. We'll remember these times and miss these times at some point. But you're still going to deal with the emotions of those frustrations and in the moment.
Mm-hmm. No, totally. I mean, I'm in the season of life now where I have a daughter who's 20 years old. I've just finished the teenage years and she's getting ready for her third year of college and in her third year of college. And I'm like, what just happened? Like it went by in the blink of an eye and there's so much there. And I think the one thing I would echo is simply just spending time, like being present. And obviously there's going to be moments when you are pulled away or have to do something and you're going to miss. But like when you can be present as often as you can, just be there for them and love them. And you make it through, because there's difficult, those middle school years are not easy, especially for those young girls, but you make it through. And I think if they just know that you love them and care for them, that's the most important part, and being with them, that you want to spend time with them, that you're not.
Yeah.
I saw, unfortunately, when I was at ESPN, I saw a lot of dads just miss time, and they would excuse it as, well, I'm working and I'm the one that's helping provide these opportunities. So when I am with my kid, I'm present. But I'm like, you can do both. Like you can still be present in the midst of your job and not have that take priority. What was that like the last few years with you, especially during the times when you're playing football, you have your kids being born? I would imagine there was some kind of wrestle or push-pull with that, on wanting to be present as a dad, but also knowing like you had to be present as a quarterback as well.
Yeah, I think it's you have to figure out your routine and your schedule. For me, it was getting to the facility early, getting my extra film in before the day started. So when the day ended, I could leave. Because a lot of guys, early in my career, it'd be like, all right, let's stay and watch film after. Let's get the extra work. But then you're at the facility till like 8, 8:30, 9. And I wanted to see my kids for dinner. I wanted to be able to be there at bedtime. And, not every time I'd get home, I would be in the best mood. I mean, I know a lot of times, when I played in Chicago, there were some really difficult times and I would get home just totally beat up emotionally. And as much as I wanted to be that great father and great husband, my wife would recognize that and be like, hey, sweetheart, like, why don't you just go rest? And just because I needed a moment just to take a breath and breathe. And she's like, hey, just go rest. I got you. But it was like, that's why, like, I'm so grateful for Tori throughout this journey. Like we did it all together. And we recognized when one was in that situation, like, hey, I got you. I'll lift you up. If she's having a tough day, hey, why don't you go? I got the kids, rest. And I think that's really important in the marriage aspect, because most of the time we're there together, tag team, but there are those moments where one of us just needs a moment. And throughout my career, that was the big thing. But I always wanted to be home for dinner, and then even like taking our off day. Most of the career, there was no off day. But I decided that when we had an off day and once I had kids, like, I'm going to be home. I will watch my film on the iPad. I will do my body work at home. And then I want to do some activities with my kid, whether it's like we go outside and play and take them to a park, go on a walk, bike ride, zoo. Like, let's do something fun, because I want them to know Dad's here. And then when we joined the Colts, I think the final thing for me, I knew when we joined the Colts that was going to be our last team. Just because like when I decided to go there, I was like, Tori, no matter what happens, if I play amazing and another team wants to sign me, whatever, like, this is it. Like, this is it for us. This is our last move. Let's just know that. So going into it, let's give it everything we have. But I'll never forget the day that we had Bodie was born in Indianapolis. That day, Frank Reich was fired, and we hired Jeff Saturday, who both are great men. But in that instance, I was just like, this is a lot. Like, this is like a couple games. Like, we're not even a third of the way through the season, and we're already firing our head coach, who I came to play for, amongst other things. So that part of the game started getting to me in the sense of like, man, I got 3 kids at home. We just had our newborn, and all this is happening the day we're like literally an hour before Tori's pushing. Sam Ellinger is texting me, hey, Frank was just fired. And then we have Bodie, and then he's texting me, we just hired Jeff. And I just, and it's just a lot. And great locker room, all those different things. They're doing well now, but it made it very clear to me that my heart was changing in the sense of like, all right, you know what, this is a lot of my family. And my wife was more than willing to keep going and do it. But we had those talks, and I made the decision like, hey, you know what, last time I took off my pads, that was it. I was injured against the Giants, messed up my ribs, and called my wife and just told her like, hey, sweetheart, like, this is it. This will be the last time I take off the pads. She's like, no, you're being rash. I'm like, no, like, Frank's not here. We came, we love Frank. Like, we love the coaching staff, but there was a lot of changes that were happening, and I saw them and love who they hired with, Shane Steichen and everything, but it was just the right time for me and my heart.
So no opportunities at all in 23 like that. So you knew without officially being retired, like this was it, or were you getting some calls and some texts maybe from some people to say, hey, maybe Nick, one more year? Was that happening at all, or not really?
It was one of those things where we were going to be really specific, because we knew when we went to Indy, like we made it clear, like, this is where we want to be, this is where we want to end. So I knew I needed to give myself a year, and there wasn't many calls, because I think that when I went to Indy, I had made it sort of clear that was where it was going to be. And I mean, teams that call, they want to know, like, you want to be there, right?
Sure,
and
of course.
I think when I did media, like I'm coming here, I want to be a part of the Colts, tried to be here for many years with Frank. And, the Colts were great with, they needed the roster spot, and they wanted to start over fresh. They made it very clear they didn't want old quarterbacks in the room and stuff like that. And they've done a nice job, and I really like what the team's doing. But it just was the right time in my heart. But you also have to take the time away. There's part of the business. There's part of the game that you have to deal with. So gave myself the year and understood that it was time. So announcing the retirement and being retired and doing it as an Eagle is the right thing to do.
Yeah, I was just going to bring that up because it's Monday night when, you get to go to kind of be honored and be a captain and watch the Eagles battle the Falcons on Monday Night Football on ESPN. And there's just something about, obviously you win a Super Bowl and, they're building statues out in front of the stadium, which is understandable. It's the first title they ever had, and it's such a cool thing to see, and they celebrate that. But those Eagles fans are so passionate, rabid. Sometimes they go across the line, but for the most part, they just love their birds. They love their team. What's it mean for you to kind of be able to have an opportunity to go back on Monday night, go back to that stadium, knowing what you were able to be a part of, 6 years ago, 7 years ago?
Yeah, I mean, it's out of my whole career, it's weird. Like, I've been very blessed to play for great organizations, but for some reason, when I think about my career, I only think of Midnight Green.
Yeah.
It's weird to think I played for other teams because it doesn't seem real. Like, it feels like I was always an Eagle and should have always been an Eagle. Though I'm grateful for the other teams I played for because of, giving me that opportunity. I got to meet so many different teammates, which is so cool. So many different coaches. So I don't say that in a slight. I say that in how special Philly is to me. So to end it this way, someone asked me, like, are you excited? And it's like, I'm really excited. I think I could simply just throw in a fax and put a paper in and be retired, and I'd be content with that. But I do feel like being retired as an Eagle and doing it this way is the right way. And it needs to be done because of how I feel about Philadelphia.
Yeah.
It's just special. I mean, I just think running out in the link, it just always felt like we had superpowers. It always felt special wearing those colors. It always felt special going in that city, that fan base. I mean, you get asked all the time from, friends and all this, like, where's the best stadium you've ever, because I mean, there's all these amazing stadiums now. And I'm like, if you've never been to the link on a primetime game, you've never been to a game. I'm like, there is nothing like it. It is so special. I think even when I was playing for like the Bears, I woke up in sweats, like sweating because I was playing for the Bears, but I had this dream that I ran out of the tunnel as an Eagle again. And I like was like drenched in sweat, and I didn't know what was going on, but I'd even have dreams of that. So to do this with my family, loved ones, kids to nieces, I think it's going to be really cool to end it this way. And I think I'll feel really good about ending my career that way.
How often are you asked about Super Bowl 52? I would imagine anytime you're recognized when you go out, that's one of the first questions people ask.
Yeah, honestly, like where I live in California, it's
That's true. You can hide a little bit.
I mean, I'll go play pickleball and like I'll get like comments like, "Man, you're a really good athlete. Like, did you play like sports?" Like I've been asked if I was like a former tennis player, which is a compliment when you're playing pickleball. It means you're doing something. But then I'm also like, dude, I'm like 2'6". I'm a big guy. Like, and then one guy I remember thought I was like a tight end. Oh, you play like small, like tight end in college? No, I was a quarterback. Where'd you play? And eventually they find out.
Yeah.
But I think, when people do recognize me and, because I never go like, hey, I'm Nick Foles, I play for the Eagles. I just go about my life. And then occasionally, just the other day, someone was like asking me like, oh, you play ball. Like, where'd you play ball? Oh, University of Arizona. Okay. Like anything else? Yeah, I played in the NFL, primarily with the Eagles. Oh, cool. What's your name? And I say it and they're like, oh, and they freak out. And I'm like, oh yeah. I'm like, they're like, you should have started with that. I'm like, well, I didn't want to like assume you knew who I was. Like, we're just having a conversation.
Sure.
But yeah, and then the Philly, they'll be like, oh, you caught the pass, the Philly special, and that'll come up. And I always enjoy it because like if they want to hear about it, like that's their first time asking me. So instead of being like, oh yeah, it's like, no, this is cool. Like they recognize that. They recognize the team, the special team we had in the Super Bowl, and then they recognize that play that's iconic for the city of Philadelphia. So it's always cool. But fortunately, I live in a place where I really just get to blend in and go to the grocery store, and life is pretty simple. People think like, you could have been a good athlete. I'm like, yeah, I guess I could have.
Except for this weekend coming up, because this weekend it'll be everywhere, and that'll be fun because those Philly fans are the best. I'll never forget the story that you told me. I think you might have told it on that podcast that you launched a few years ago, about the night after you beat, who did you beat? Minnesota to win the
Minnesota
title. Yep. And you like snuck in to that restaurant in Philly, and you got to see all the fans celebrating without them knowing that you were even there, right?
Yeah.
Does that story sound right?
No, that's right. We it was after we won the NFC Championship game, and we had family in town, and my agent had called a restaurant to see if they'd stay open because Broad Street was crazy. And I mean, you're hungry after those games. It's a lot, and you want to eat. And so we make it downtown. The police officers who were kind, they're like, you're not going to be able to make it down there. It's a madhouse. But we were able to make it. We found a parking lot off of Broad Street, and we're walking and there's fans everywhere. And looking back, my one regret in that moment, and I was not smart. It was cold, so I was wearing like a beanie and stuff. And my brother-in-law, who's like 6'5", was standing next to me, so like he was blocking. I should have just put on a dog mask. Like that was the biggest thing at the game was the dog mask for the underdogs. And like, I've actually thought about that several times. Like if I just wore a dog mask and just walked around, it would have been a lot easier than worrying if someone was going to, spot me.
Yes.
But I did not do that. I was not thinking. I've just thought that many years later. But yeah, it's, so I got to witness the celebrations firsthand, and then I got to spend some really good quality time with family that was there. Cause that's always my favorite part after games is, you go through that game, which is a lot of emotions, a lot of stress, a lot of highs, a lot of lows. And then you finally get that breath of like, all right, I get this family time. I get to be with family and just enjoy their company, and they get to talk about the game. And I just get to sit there. And I just remember just sitting there and just watching like my family just talk and just be. And those moments are so special because they're far and few between. You don't really get that as you get older. So to have that was really special for me.
No, that's good. Nick Foles is with us here on Sports Spectrum. So everybody's going to say, well, what's next? And you're wearing a hat that says DadSzn. So DadSzn is next, literally, as you're in it, like I said, with 3 little ones. But that's also something that you've kind of launched here and got behind with this DadSzn product. So share with us a little bit about the hat you're wearing and the product and the mindset on being a part of this.
Yeah, my one of my best friends, Pat O'Donnell, we were teammates in Chicago. This idea started in 2023, and He had printed it on a shirt, real simple. I was not, because I was figuring out what I was doing with my career. Am I truly done? Am I not? But I knew I needed time, and he wanted me to do it with him originally. And I was like, hey, I need some time, but I'll be your soundboard. So we're talking all the time about dad season. What's it going to be? What are we going to do? Is it a podcast? Is it YouTube? Is it this? Is it that? And we just kept talking. And he had a shirt. He had some sweatshirts, no hats. And then early this year in 2024, we were just talking about it so much because I could tell there was a passion because I love being a dad and I know how important fatherhood is in a child's life because I had a great example of my dad has been a great example of my life. So with dad season, I'm like, dude, like, let's just focus on apparel. Let's just focus on hats. Guys love hats. I love hats. So we went through this whole rabbit hole of like printing on random hats, like trying random hats, and nothing was quite right because I love a good hat. I believe in a hat that looks good, but is also comfortable. There's a lot of hats that look good, but they are not comfortable. And I've got them before. I've been given them before. I wear them once and I throw them in my closet and then I eventually give them away because I'm like, that's just not a comfortable hat. So we were fortunate to find someone that we could design our own hats with. And so we came out with a hat line and we're expanding our hat line as we grow. I think people are still figuring out what it is. So dad season. Life is full of seasons. We all know that. Childhood, teenage years, high school, college. Like there's different seasons that change. Then you become a father and there's different seasons within fatherhood. So like you're in a different season than I'm in. But in a couple of years, I will be in a different season than I am now. So dad season is a dad apparel brand that we love. We want to build strong, physically, mentally, spiritually dads. We want to have great gear. We want to eventually grow it into telling stories like a podcast where we say you and I are talking. We're talking about our profession. Like you asked me, how were you a dad while you play? We talked ball and stuff, but then like, how are we being a father? How is that important? Where do we think we did things well? Where could we have done better? Because I feel like that's really important. Like, let's talk ball. Let's talk at the high level. But let's talk about the most important thing, being a husband and father. So that's the heart behind it. And the most exciting thing leading up to this Philly game is the release of the Philly Dad line, which was a few weeks ago.
Nice.
We were very Pat's wife is from Harrisburg, PA. Her family grew up Philly fans, still are passionate Philly fans, but also passionate Pat fans. Pat O'Donnell fans, not Patriots fans. Let's make that clear. They are not Patriots fans.
Yes.
So we have the Philly Dad hats, and we're working on shirts. And I'm really awesome. The reason behind it is obviously Philly is, the Philly special. Philly means a lot to me. It means a lot to the city. But when I think about Philadelphia and I think about the fans, and when I describe it, it is a generational thing, family affair. It is not just like this is a cool team. No, this is a family thing.
Oh yeah.
And it's fathers down to their children. So when we made the Philly Dad, it was like a mixture of all these emotions of like, I love the city of Philadelphia. Philly's awesome, but the fatherhood and like dads at the games in the link is the coolest thing ever. And then even like, the best stories are, I've heard like men cry of like watching the Super Bowl with their dad, and they have children as well.
Oh yeah.
How much that meant to them. So it just makes sense to have the Philly Dad line. And it's something I'm really excited about with our dad season line and seeing where we go. But it's just Pat and I and obviously our wives. And we've been blessed to have different people we work with vendors wise. But the heart behind it is it's a fatherhood brand that we want to make cool. I feel like there's a couple other brands out there that I admire. Like, I don't look at it as like, oh, they're competitors. I know, like if you're trying to empower dads of being proud dads in your dad brand, and it's like a newer niche, that's awesome. Like, I don't like, yeah, we might be technically competitors, but they might look at it that way, but I look at it as like, I'm happy that dads are wearing your stuff and are proud of being dads. Like, we want the same thing with our brand. We'll have a different niche than you will, but like, let's do this together and create strong dads. And then as we grow the company, let's find ways to give back to the community. I know there's different things that we want to do as we grow because we're so young. It's Pat and I. Like, we don't have like big company coming in and like fun, like doing this. Like, we want to create the best dad season brand we can and do it well and enjoy the process. And Pat and I talk every day. We get to talk through stuff. Our wives are always talking, oh yeah, that color, this. But it's a lot of fun, and grateful to get to do it with one of my best friends who I love and admire. And, we're both believers in Jesus. And, I know that even with like men's ministries out there, I know that that'd be great and all these different things we can do military wise. But right now we're just so young. We're just focusing on creating the best brand we can. And then we'll just see where those opportunities lie.
Yeah. See where the Lord moves. I think you know this. My brother, Chris Romano, is PhD, Dr. Chris Romano, Bible scholar. He knows the Bible better than anybody I know. He's also the biggest Eagles fan in the world. And him and my two nephews, Caleb and Sam Romano, are huge Eagles fans. And the experience of them, it's on YouTube somewhere, of them watching you guys win the Super Bowl with my brother. And they're like on the ground hugging. And it was like this religious experience, like you described. Yeah. So they're going to have to know about this Philly shirt. And but the idea behind, like you say, just being an experience with family, and especially for those dads, like I think about my brother, who's the only Eagles fan in our family. I'll just be honest. He
might be my favorite Romano.
Well, he probably is. I think he surpassed me by a mile after I just said that publicly. But he's also got his whole family, his 5 kids. It's two sons, my 2 nephews, like all diehard Eagles fans. And so they live and die every Sunday watching, and in this case, Monday night, and be able to get to watch you. So,
that's so cool.
By the way, DadSzn is SZN, as people are listening. Maybe they haven't seen it.
We have to make it hippie. It's got to be hip. It's got to be cool. It's got to have a Z. And while we're on this, I have it right here. I got to grab this.
Okay.
I got I don't know where my black hat is, because we just did a fun shoot the other day, not too long ago. But I have the white Philly dad hat, and you'll be able to find it on our website.
Okay.
But so we got the white.
Philly dad. I love that. Yep.
Yeah. And we got that. And then like our slogan, because when you become a dad, no days off.
No days off. That's true.
Very clean. And the big thing too is, like I said, fit. I have a big head. So when we designed it, like a lot of hats are like, hey, we just make them in the regular 58s. I was like, okay, we can do that. We're going to add a little flex fit because we want some comfortability. We want to be comfortable, but we're also doing an XL. Like we're doing a big boy head. So the guys out there that want they're like, oh, that hat's cool. It's not going to fit me. I have a big head. We added some flex fit. We added a little more depth. There's some big heads out there. So we might have to go double XL at some point, but like it'll fit your big head. And it'll be comfortable. Men's Warehouse, you'll like the way you look. So
I love that. DadSzn. DadSzn.com is the website, and people can go and get their Philly hats or their dad season hats. I can't wait to get my hats and get one for my brother too, that Philly hat. Before we say goodbye, a lot of the conversations that you and I have had both on this show, but even just talking in general, have been surrounded around ministry, seminary. Just wondering where you're at with that, and sort of how your desire and your hope as far as still wanting to pursue the Lord more, grow obviously in your relationship with him, but potentially be into a world of ministry at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. I took several courses through Liberty online, which has been wonderful. And then currently at Redemption Seminary online. And it's right now in this season with our kids being 6, 4, and 1, finding the time I pretty shortly, like when our youngest starts a preschool program and he's not running around, I'll probably have a little more time. So it's always on my back of my mind to keep going and keep growing.
Sure.
In faith. And there's some people out there listening to this and be like, oh, you don't really grow in faith in seminary. It's school. And I can see that through different courses, but I will say, like, when I'm at Redemption Seminary and how they have it set up, it's like a portfolio journal, go through curriculum, what you're retaining as it pertains to your spiritual walk. So I really enjoy that because I'm looking for spiritual growth and knowledge through biblical history, church history, who came before me, and how to grow as someone in faith. Because once again, we're all flawed. We're all sinners. I'm a sinner in need of a savior. But yeah, it's something that I do want to pursue. And the ultimate reason would be obviously the growth, but like, I feel like I'm called and I haven't acted on this. When I'm at church, there's always like these volunteer things and what you can do, like high school ministry, middle school ministry. I just feel like at some point when I feel like my kids are old enough and I have the time, like the high school ministry aspect. One, because like I'm a kid at heart. My wife would definitely reiterate that at sometimes. She like feels like we have 3 kids, but she sometimes says I'm the 4th. And then my dog gets in on the action, Henry.
Yes.
And he's like, we have 5 kids. None of you're not an adult, which is good. I'm a child at heart. So I feel like high school ministry would be really cool in our community. But that has to be at the right time. Right now, we're focusing. We got 3 little kids that we're really just trying to pour in on. And we're probably growing more in our faith and as a human being raising them right now with the everyday's journey than they are, but we're really doing our best. Like you said, being there, being intentional, being around. Quantity of time and quality of time has been really good for everyone. And I sleep pretty good at night until one of them comes and wakes us up, of course.
Yes, you're in that season of life.
We're in dad season like 1.2 or something. We'll make a scale of dad season throughout the brand.
Yeah, it's still the first quarter. You got plenty of time here.
Yeah, we just had our first drive and we probably went 3 and out. So we got to figure out I got to figure out how to march down and execute these plays.
That's right. Well, let me ask you one final question, which actually kind of connects to dad season. I think in the season of life you're in as a dad and as a husband, what's the Lord been showing you and working in you of late? Because I think a lot of people, when they become parents, when I became a dad, I didn't really have a great relationship with my dad, as you know, and I also didn't really grow up in church or in faith at all. So when I started to have this relationship with Jesus, I really didn't still understand God as Father, and then I became a dad. And that just opens your eyes a little bit to understanding, just on a tiny level, the love of God as Father towards us. So as you've lived this season now that you're in, right, this newly retired season as a dad, what's the Lord been kind of showing you and teaching you?
I mean, he's been teaching me so much so at times I feel like I'm just like failing at everything. But I also have the faith to, step back and realize like I have 3 kids that I love more in the world. Do they get what they want all the time? No. Do I have to discipline them? Yes, I do it out of love. Our daughter, not so much. She's actually a pretty good kid. I actually don't really get a chance to discipline her. So when she ever does, I do because she's not used to it. But our boys give me plenty of opportunities to discipline every single day. But then I realized, in life, I feel like one of the hardest things we go through is, why do things happen? Why did this happen? Why did this happen to me? Why am I not getting this promotion? Why am I not succeeding? And then I'm like, all right, I'm a dad. This is what I'm doing. Our Heavenly Father loves us more than I could ever love our children. So I can't give my children everything they want. They wouldn't grow up it wouldn't be right. Like they'd grow up entitled, like all these different things. And I'm like, so when our Heavenly Father does that, he's trying to teach us something. He's allowing us to grow and realize like, that's not what it's about. It's about our faith. Like I'm trying to lovingly discipline our children. So when they grow up, they understand the important characteristics of life and how to live life. And my hope is someday they give their life to Christ, obviously on their own, because I can't do it for them. So I would say just being a father is teaching me how it's growing my relationship with my Heavenly Father, because I know what it means to be like an earthly father, if that makes any sense.
Sure.
But I also think too, in this season, as a player, I always felt like I was calm, cool, and like really in control. And as a father, sometimes I feel like I am not out of control. That sounds bad, but I feel like I get flustered and rattled more. Like if let's just say like, I love my son, Duke. Like he's just such a special soul. He's going to do amazing things in the world, greater than I could ever do. But right now it's my job as his father to shape him. And let's just say he is shaping me as well. But
he's 4, right? 4 years old.
He's 4 and he's smart. He's spunky, but like, he's like, there's some things he does. I'm like, dude, you're 4 and you're already doing this. Like, my goodness. And I know hopefully someday he'll like watch this and just know how much I love him. But the reason I lovingly discipline, and I say lovingly discipline, I got that from a Tim Keller sermon. I forget the specific topic, so I don't want to misspeak on that. But the topic was like how God lovingly disciplines his children, because if he just shows love, they'll become entitled. And if he just disciplines them, they'll lose heart. But if he disciplines out of love, he shapes people that change the world in his name. And that just stuck with me. It was like a 4-part sermon. If people ask about it, I know I can find it. I've saved it. And it just really helped me as I was a younger father a few years ago, realize like I have to lovingly discipline my children. I cannot just let them get their way. I'm figuring out how to do that. Like, how do I reach our kids? How do I get down to their level and speak to them? And a lot of it's our actions. You don't realize how much these kids are watching until they do something you did. And you're like, wow, they got that from me.
Yes.
Or they say something and you're like, what'd you say? Like, oh, I heard daddy or mommy say that. Or I said daddy first, right? So I didn't say mommy.
You did.
Mommy doesn't do anything wrong. And I'm very fortunate to have a wonderful wife. So Tori, if you ever listen to this, just know how much I love you. But it's just so important. So all that ramble to say, I am growing so much in this season of fatherhood, more than I ever did probably playing in the NFL. And God is using our children to help us grow more than we probably are allowing them to grow. So I'm super grateful for it. And just it's fun talking about. And it's fun listening to people with wisdom, because it is a very important season of our lives.
Yeah, and there's no more important job, I think, that God will give us than being a dad. Obviously,
No
being
doubt.
a husband too, but being a dad and being able to be entrusted temporarily. I always say, you only get them for 18 years or so, and then it's like, okay, go spread your wings, which is the season I'm in. There's nothing better than that. I really believe that. So I love what you're about, Nick, obviously, but I love the DadSzn brand too, because I just feel like you never stop being a dad, no matter what age you're at. And it's a good reminder that the Lord, as Heavenly Father, doesn't stop being a dad to us either in some ways. So appreciate you, man. Congrats on retirement, and grateful that you came back on the show, and got to get some of that DadSzn apparel now and rock it out on the show. So I appreciate you, man.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on, Jason. That was a wonderful talk, and excited for your next talks.
Yeah, let's do it soon. See ya.
See ya.
Hey, thanks for watching Sports Spectrum here on YouTube. You can click our next video, or you can check out our website, sportsspectrum.com.